these meaningful conversations going for 24 years at least. This is the 25th. Let's see how this goes. But to have kept that going is such a great tribute to him, and to just what he stood for. So my humblest tributes to Narendra. And I'm also deeply honored that you thought that I should come and speak to you and speak to everybody who knows everything about journalism. So at least, rearrange the facts in some way and hopefully provide one or two insights. And I'm apologetic also for not being able to speak in Malayalam. I would have spoken if I could, but you'll have to suffer me in English. So, as I said, the caveat here is that all of you know everything there is to know about journalism. There's little that I could be telling all of you. But in this, I think we're at a very important juncture today. And whatever happened to Jantar Mantar, media, big, medium, small, independent, dependent, Godi, unlap, lap, all impacted that. And in a lot of ways, what you saw erupt was also part response, part fed by the whole infosphere, if that's how you imagine it. It's not just channels, news, it's social media, it's little tidbits of information. We swim in that part slop, part truth universe. And this is very much a response to that. So I think we stand at a very critical juncture. So I'll go a little out of syllabus and try and do a little bit of before Jantar Mantar, because I think really understanding what has been happening structurally before Jantar Mantar is critical to being able to appreciate beyond Jantar Mantar. So do indulge me as I move away. So Bruce Springsteen has this great song, which is 57 Channels and Nothing On. It's a very old song. But you just look at what's happening. We never understood that song. This was many years ago, decades ago. Now that you look at the India scene and you find that, we have what? We have 1,40,000 registered newspapers and periodicals, 22,000 newspapers in 189 languages. We have 900 television channels, of which 350 are news channels. The majority of them are 24/7. We have more than 850 FM radio channels, of which only the state-owned All India Radio is allowed to broadcast news. Others are allowed to do propaganda, but news only AIR does. And in terms of smartphones, of a population of 1.4 billion, you have 750 to a billion smartphones, which doesn't mean that so many people have those smartphones, but there are several people who have several smartphones. But that's the kind of media sort of universe, if you like, or a backdrop that we find ourselves in. So what was happening beyond Jantar Mantar? Very briefly, as I said again, we know it, but I think the journey of what one journalist called from mainstream media to mainstream media must be understood and appreciated. So Arthur Miller, I think in 1961, he called the definition of a newspaper as a nation talking to itself. So a good newspaper in a good bourgeois liberal sense, if you like, or whatever, in a liberal democracy, is a paper that has many pages, it presumably has many viewpoints, and it allows for an exchange. It's actually various parts of the nation talking to itself. From there, where is media now? So 4 essential functions of the media, as we all know: provide information, provide a forum for discussion, not debate, discussion. You fix accountability. So if there are floods, you don't go after Pawan Khera or you don't go after Rahul Gandhi. You know who you go after if there are floods in Assam. So to fix accountability in the mind of the public, and to fix financial accountability, like if there is 54,000 crores by the Modi government is unspent, you chase that up and you find out why is it that you announce these allocations and why are the spends not showing. These 4 things constitute our jobs. But I think the 1990s are a break in a way that we don't acknowledge, or we do acknowledge, but we have no time to acknowledge because there's stuff happening after 2014, which is far more catastrophic. But the scene was set in 2014 for this mega takeover, if you like, of Indian media. Because from the 90s, you have a situation where, thanks to liberalization, with the press being the absolute vanguard of the liberalization, the whole LPG business of papers went pink. They decided to look at crime, cricket, cinema, the 3 Cs, and deep competition. And it was clear that information is a commodity. It shall be sold, it shall be bought. We will do what you want to hear. So we won't tell you what if a Dalit girl at 6 has been raped in some remote corner of UP, you don't want to know, but we'll tell you about the fashion show. And I'm not being facetious. This is exactly how beats went in newsrooms. You lost agriculture correspondents, you lost industry correspondents. They were renamed business correspondents. The economy page is renamed the business page. So these are very significant shifts happening. There are great salary hikes happening. A lot of people of my generation who joined are beneficiaries of that. And we benefited from the journalist traveling in a bigger car than the person they're going to interview, right? Big black car comes in, interviewee comes in. Bigger black car comes in, interviewer jumps out. And the celebritification of the journalist, everything kind of happens. And it's all very happy, I think, pretty much till 2008, when the global financial crisis really breaks things down with the advent of the economy collapsing for print media, also due to technology. So they don't know how to make money off this. So we have all these printing presses and we have influence and we value this. But how do we make money? The whole project, or at least the whole idea that we are serving democracy, we are a pillar of democracy, our business is to inform, we do investigate, we are journalism of courage. We will go out and report the CAG report, and we will question the Prime Minister, and we will go after Manmohan Singh or Gujral or Deve Gowda or whoever, or Atal Bihari Vajpayee also. He used to take on a good deal of questioning too. All that then comes under severe strain starting 2013. And you also have people who are people personally who are compromised in various other businesses that they do, of which newspapers or media is one of them. Paid news emerging. Something that was a malpractice at a very private level becomes corporate. There are proper packages being passed around, and proper packages like, do you want me to write an editorial on you, a little bit in the sports page, and one mention of a spokesman on page one. That's how finest, at least in the Hindi press, the packages are. And that was what was happening. So on the eve of 2014, you have a very beholden media. It's already broken because it's wondering what to do with Facebook. All that has come in. It doesn't know how to handle social media. And it also is run by proprietors who are looking very hopefully at Mr. Modi's government. There's a genuine, more than they just say it's pressure. I don't think it's that much pressure. It's pressure they probably, a majority of them would like to give in to, because they believe that this man would come and he'll resolve our problems. He'll whack those trade unions. He'll put them in place. He's good for India. He'll fix, he believes in M for Modi is M for money. I've been told as much. So there is that scene. There is also another thing that we must not ignore, which a Reuters report brought out so cleanly, as to who is running in these newsrooms and who's telling these stories. It's a shocking statistic about a complete upper caste and upper class capture of newsrooms, whether it is people who head newsrooms or whether it's anchors. You don't even have opinion or leader writers. You would be struggling to hear from. And this is just because it's the system. It's not as if some individual is sitting in doing this, but the system is very much baked into the whole business which Mr. Modi's government faces in 2014. Small sidebar. If you remember the documentary by the BBC on Gujarat that was banned, if you saw it before it was banned, Mr. Modi is asked by the BBC correspondent Jill McGivering that of all the things, is there anything you regret about Gujarat? So, you perk up and you say, maybe he says, I do regret some deaths, or I regret some administrative failure, or I should not have called people puppies, whatever. He says, yes, I have one regret. And that regret is my inability to control the media. And that was something which our Gujarati friends and fellow journalists told us for a long time, that you guys haven't seen anything yet. Wait till that flight from Ahmedabad to Delhi and you all start getting controlled. And as Advani also said during the emergency, that you asked them to bend, that they would crawl. We saw a really uber version of that happening from 2014 onwards. And there was all kinds of the indications of control are complete. When you look at the, 5,987.46 crore in advertisements of Mr. Modi and the party in 10 years, that's 1.5 crore every day. And that's just the central government. Where is this money going to? It's going to newspapers, which otherwise would, for all those reasons before. So all our weaknesses of so-called big media caught up with it in 2014, this utter dependence on the money that's being spent on publicity. And there is what a Hindi commentator called error 404 journalism, that you actually have older stories that you go back to online, and it just shows error 404 journalism. So journalists, business houses started practicing error 404 journalism, that your own stories would just be scrubbed off the stream. A News Minute tracked 429 primetime debates in the run-up to 2024. There were 224 debates that were anti-opposition and 116 were pro-Modi. So that's the kind of skew that you have. You know all this. I'm just giving numbers so other people who just kind of, track the numbers bear this out. There was another survey again, which looked at 53 issues of India today. 1 year in the run-up to the 2024 polls, India bloc was covered in 7, but 5 after April 15th. 16% of all editions featured Narendra Modi on cover, and stories and editors' letters all praised Modi. There was also 202 TV debates. This is the 2019 election. And just after that, they looked at Zee News, India TV, Aaj Tak, News 18, and their coverage was telling they attacked Pakistan in 202 debates, in 79 debates. They attacked the opposition in 66, praising Modi and the BJP RSS 36, Ram Mandir 14, Bihar floods 3, Chandrayaan moon mission 2. PMC bank scam 1, economy 0, unemployment 0, education 0, healthcare 0, public infrastructure 0, farmers distress 0, poverty and malnutrition 0, women's safety 0, environmental protection 0, mob lynching 0, questioning any government policy or decision 0. So in this kind of a scene, you have Jantar Mantar appearing. And why is this whole suffocation of just being buried with the facts? Media's job being to join the dots. If I'm unemployed, my kids are unemployed, my neighbors are unemployed, I start thinking as a good Indian who's watching Godi media, that's just my damned luck. I'm just so abhaga and I'm so unfortunate. It's media's job to tell me that, median wages haven't risen in this country for 15 years. Unemployment amongst graduates is at the highest there is amongst all emerging economies. The kind of jobs we give are not salary jobs. So Mr. Modi was right when he said, "Ki pakoda talo," just fry whatever stuff, savory, and that's your job. That level of informalization that has come to this part. However, in India, we've always believed, the slumdog millionaire thesis that there's a way to escape these trappings, and education was your passport, right? That was my big ticket out of it. Once you come there and you completely destroy the sense of a competition, which allows me to break out of, I go to cram school somehow, I do everything, I sell land, and I do just go to coaching and I prepare that. And if that's also a farce, papers are being leaked, there's a problem. And as somebody sort of pointed out, a teacher, they said that there was actually a sense that even when they attend class, the impoverished syllabus, so they may not be buying all these articles about the RSS syllabus, etc., but when they go there, they feel more disempowered. If the act of coming to university is an act of empowering students, at the end of the class, they've got nothing, invariably. And this is also the COVID education generation. They've just had to put up with ridiculous online stuff, which is on their dad's phone or something, maybe somewhere where he's got 3 kids. And I don't know how they're dividing their time to do online teaching. So I think the closure of government schools, 94,000 government schools have been closed in a decade, which amounted to, I think, 25 schools being closed every day, or some such ridiculous statistic. And for any government that was looking and thinking they should have known this coming, NCRB recorded 123,000 students in the country as having taken their lives between 2014 and 2024, citing failure in examinations and family problems. As many as 15,000 students died by suicide in 2024, for which government data is available. And this is an 80% jump over the past decade. But all is well if you watch TV news. However, if you looked again and you found how people were feeling, you looked at the RBS surveys, they have a very interesting line buried under all that very scary stuff, which is consumer sentiment. That has been steadily going down. And you can just watch the record. Even when good things are happening, 5 trillion, 4 trillion announcements are happening, that consumer sentiment is not picking up. So that is there. There's also a Mood of the Nation survey, which is done. I think it's among the oldest surveys other than the CSDS, which records the mood of the nation, and it's something which Godi media, big media is happy to show on TV, etc. So it usually is people who say we are voting for Mr. Modi, reports good results, but there's so much hidden there, and actually not so much hidden, but not thrown up. 52% of them, as recently as February 2024, said that the policies of this government are made for big businessmen and for bada log. So stuff was coming out, but media, with its utter unwillingness and inability to join the dots, was forcing youngsters at Jantar Mantar to swim in this. There's a damn circus without the bread. So give them bread and circuses, but there's just some random circus which is telling the story of another country. And my situation is like so bad. And I think all that just somehow came to a boiling point in how things happen. You said that he's come from outside, etc. But I think Deepke actually, for whatever, maybe I don't know him personally, is a really a very fine example of somebody from a Dalit background. And no doubt he's trained, he was an art worker, but there's something very authentic in the way he responded to the Chief Justice of India, terming people as cockroaches. And this is not the first. You had people referred to as parasites, as termites. We've been told, you're Dimak here, you're eating up the country, etc. So I think there is something authentic happening there, which media just did not want to take note of, and that explains the complete outrage that Godi media received, which shocked them. It's sad, but as per the CSDS survey poll 2024, 66% said that they watch at least one Godi channel. Public trust, though, in media, they didn't say Godi, is really down. And it's only politicians are less trusted than media. So let's look at what has actually been happening now, despite all this, on what I come back to the subject now, as to what exactly should be happening now. What have we been seeing? So we've been seeing a little bit of a vibe shift, very little, as in they acknowledge that something's happening. Alt News did a story that ANI, which tweets every 19 seconds or so, had no tweet on anything being suffered by students in the first 24 hours that they reported this on the 20th of July. So from going to complete absence, like just don't show it, pretend it's like labor protests or something, which are just completely ignored, to now being shown. But I think the vibe shift is clearly, like, I believe a senior media house, which I will not name, owned by a big industrialist, has held serious meetings, and they've said, what's going on? We need to be now on Instagram and get new propaganda artists on. You guys, this format is not working. The TV format is over. So please switch to a newer format. So like Mr. Modi's Reels, and you have all these MPs doing all this. So there'll be this completely bizarre and absolutely mad attempt at trying to pretend that they're Gen Z, so using that language and trying to sort of make sure that they infiltrate through Instagram. And of course, we're doing a story on it. The amount of bans that are happening on Instagram are absolutely crazy. And it's not as if just youth-related things are being banned. That's just being taken as an excuse to go slam ban on everything. Everything that we've done on the transnational repression, 2 stories have been knocked out on that. And it's just a wild way of just suppression. So I think there is a market case for media to actually do things. And this a very good journalist, Vanita Koli-Khandekar, who she studies it from a business perspective, but she looks at television particularly. And she actually did the maths after the elections last time around. And she said that if 36.6% of India has voted, all of media seems to concentrate on these 235 million consumers. But just looking at the number of people who voted, there are 407 million consumers who are not being catered to. So if economics was the only thing moving these people, there's a clear case for putting out stuff, right, for the remaining 74% of the electorate, which is not in agreement, which is consistently, after 12 years of these people being in power, not voting for them. But so why is it being left untended? So there is a lot of optimism, and people say, aha, now you'll learn a lesson and all that. My optimism about that is extremely on the low side. It's probably -3 on the Richter scale of optimism, because the underlying conditions, the complete devotion is missing. A lot of people think that media switches around. When governments will change, it will switch around. I think that may not, unfortunately, be very true right now. Some of it is like that kind of a switchability, but the kind of media control, the flip that's happened in the ownership is very significant. Of course, rich men and women, very few women, mostly rich men ran the media earlier as well, but they were random rich men, right? Mostly. Some of them, okay, they were powerful people because they subscribed, they picked up information, they could wield information as power and dominate. But they were not the biggest businessmen of Asia, which are best friends with the ruling regime and who are getting the best possible treatment by economic policy. That big switch we should not ignore. So maybe we're not watching Mr. Ambani's channels or Mr. Adani's channels, but the fact that they own channels in hundreds, they own even an agency. IANS is also run by a big businessman. NDTV has very carefully passed on to Mr. Adani. It has a spectrum of channels, and for those of you who have friends globally who watch NDTV being very popular globally, extremely right-thinking people, sensible people would still carry on watching NDTV and quote me. Then I said, yeah, this is now owned by Adani. They forget that because, the uniforms are the same, the style, the Prannoy Roy accent, the way of doing things. So, so it's seamlessly propaganda has replaced that. So I'm not so sanguine about a big switch, supposing, if Deepke becomes prime minister, that media will suddenly change. No, they'll all go independent media then. They will be like doing their own number and doing radical stuff they should have been doing all this while. So anyway, so what has media been doing? So they've done a little bit of wipe shift. They want all their journalists to go on Instagram. They're using strange language, not realizing that Gen Z immediately drops the words that oldies are using. They will abandon Instagram also. That's a standard. An analyst on Gen Z you talk to, they say that's the first thing. So the word Riz, which all of us oldies started using, they dropped it immediately. So you won't hear Riz. Clocked it, I'm sure, has been dropped because ever since it's been used in Parliament, etc. So that's gone. So what are we doing? I mean, are they reflecting life? I don't think so. Yesterday, I saw a headline, which was there on many things, and this is Punjab Police saying that ISI-backed module in Punjab was waiting to come to Jantar Mantar. And they were ready. We've cracked an ISI module. They were wanting to come to Jantar Mantar. So apart from demonizing protesters and going after them for abusing or whatever and saying there were people with criminal antecedents there, it's definitely a lesser percentage than in Parliament, but that they were hanging around protesting. This ISI module, and this is not a small news story. What's going to happen is in 3 weeks later, you will hear how this module is like really a big module. And there are many other nodes of this module, and they'll all be picked up. So that whole narrative building, trying to push a protest, which did not center identity. It was not like the CAA protest. It was not, CAA contested the BJP on its very line of polarization that the BJP was trying to do, right? You had mostly Muslims who woke up, pulled out the constitution and said, you can't do this to us. This is different. And that's what scares the BJP about it. It doesn't center identity. It has all identities, but it doesn't center identity. And somehow education's become emotional. Education, health will always figure in people's matter of concern, but it wasn't an emotive subject. Now, emotion has got attached to education. There are kids committing suicide, and identities, it's a cross-identity protest, which is what they dislike. What are you doing by doing ISI module and all that? You're effectively trying to reshape the conversation around the protest there. And in all this nonsense about Gali, which is utter bilge, that, they were abusing. I don't even know what is the percentage of cheeky abuse. Some of it did happen. It was classic protest language, but it was a very small percentage of the total protesters. There were at least 1 lakh people in Delhi that we know who suddenly came in, and nobody was ferried in by a trolley or offered biryani at the end of it. These were people who just turned up because they felt they needed to be there. It was actually a very moving moment in India, just near Parliament. And why did tussles with the cops also happen? Because if it was frankly a standard protest that political parties would do, you'd stop at the barricade, right? And you will give your parcha and you will give your memo, and then you'd say, okay, we marched and came back. These guys came and said, no, I've come from Madhya Pradesh, Didi, and I've come to march to Parliament. I can see that building. So I'm going to go there. I said, okay, dude, go. So they have come to march to Parliament. So this first-time protester who was also saying, police to maar rahi hai. I said, wo to marti hai, bhai, but you don't have an experience with the police. These are genuinely people who thought that it's okay, I've come to march to Parliament, I'll go all the way. That's seriously terrifying. Something like this would be such fodder for, of course, a sociologist and an anthropologist, and we've gone mad just getting all those people who are writing in and want to be published. But even for journalists, it would be a moment of pause. It would be a moment of trying to understand what's happening there. Zero understanding. All that big media is doing now is trying to reshape things. It's trying to talk up Ranchi like it's some really big protest, way out of line. So, there is that. So small aside, there's a very fine Hindi writer called Shivani. She also happens to be Mrinal Pandey and Ira Pandey's mother. So Ira Pandey wrote that her mother would always say that when we were young, we were terrified of our in-laws. Now you guys are not terrified in-laws, why are you scared of young children? Why are you scared of your children? And she said something very nice, that there always will be a generation gap, but just make sure it doesn't become a degeneration gap. And she would have said this in her lifetime, but it's so true. And I hope our government can just not let this go down this way. But what is big media doing? Big media, we had an analysis by a scholar in a New Zealand university. It is up on the wire. He did an analysis of Republic TV. He analyzed, I think, 25 broadcasts over a week, and they analyzed about 59,000 words, that they did a word analysis, etc. And they found the same thing, that it's an international conspiracy. Greta Thunberg runs the world, and she's Satan, she's running it. And oddly enough, because the whole 12 years we've heard Pakistan, go to Pakistan, etc. But no. This is US is apparently. So US is referred to in a whole week 164 times as the key instigator of these protests. And China is at a low second at 89. And Pakistan has moved to 76. So this whole idea about the intentions are the same, but big media is now set on how do we reconfigure the discussion? And what is the government doing? It is clamping down on what's available on social. So 5 years later, when even you and I visit this, what's memory but what you read, what you Google in these days it's a dynamic memory, right? If stuff is taken off the net, there's that much less available to analyze. You have a completely different reading yourself of what happened in that protest. And it's got ISA in it, it's got abuse, it's got young girls. And Insta now says that there was the police tore up some girls' clothes. They said that is a child sexual kind of, it comes under CSAM. That has also been taken down. So crazy things are happening. Anyway, so coming back now to where I think there is hope. And the other thing, I don't think we should expect or hope mainstream media to become mainstream. I don't even call it mainstream. It's big media, that for sure it is. I don't think we should wait for that to happen, and I don't think that's happening. Given the way technology is, your NSS 2025 data tells you that, especially in the age group 15 to 29, 95.5% of people who own phones, they own smartphones. So unfortunately, we are, independent media, fragmented media, we're here to stay. And when I say independent media, I don't just mean the Wire, Scroll, News Laundry. We're very small, and we're cribbing always about resources, but we're still big, given small so-called reporters, influencers with 100 followers on a page, Facebook, Instagram, citizens taking videos. This kid who did that 70s number viral thing, he's actually running, being chased by the cops, and he's looking brilliant, his young face with a selfie stick as he's being chased by cops. That's an act of extreme bravery and a desire to document. It's simply an editor's dream. He's done that. So ultimately, I think we have to come to terms with the fact that independent media is small and maybe not like a cockroach, but it's definitely like bacteria and viruses. We are everywhere. There are many more like us, and may their tribe grow. And don't expect big channels to chime with you only because the government sort of took a beating in this. So I think it would be extremely unwise, because the basic underlying conditions for them, they're just too far gone invested in the whole Godi thing to suddenly start seeing reason, etc. And the change that you will see is just this kind of cosmetic change. Younger chaps, Insta, they wear sleeveless t-shirts and all, and they think that kids will think that's all extremely cool. Data again bears out to how even YouTube is unfortunately the primary search engine in India, and this is again some years ago. People are watching video like everything. I mean, there's a severe pressure on text, particularly Hindi, for example, maybe because Hindi is literacy levels are also low. So I don't think you'd have that problem in Malayalam. But literacy levels being low, video is the absolute default kind of medium. So I think we have to reconcile to a completely disparate, fragmented, and I'm glad for that. But I can't stand all these big guys who are now shaping news. That's one of the big challenges, how OpenAI, Facebook, Amazon are all kind of part of this whole news thing. And it's all a total of 4 or 4.5 men sitting in Silicon Valley who are doing this. But even then, I think we have to recognize that media will be small, it will be fragmented, and we have to do whatever we can. And as independent journalists, we'll have to actually contest this whole nonsense about you're not neutral. There is no such thing as neutrality. Subjectivity is a bad thing. One must be objective and look at various sides with a cool mind. But this whole thing that we must not take sides, I think media must take sides. And it is not about left or right or all of that. It's about standing by what is right and standing by the Constitution and directly contest those who say that we're biased, that we're not biased. We're standing up for the Constitution. Do you? Do you believe in all the words in the preamble? I'd like to ask them that. And I think eventually good information as a public good will have to be reconfigured. This is tougher because you're dealing with big capital, not just globally, but in India too, which runs media. So how do you unpack the infotainment bit, or how do you recover news as a social good? And at least for The Wire, we believe that we have to be always free and always free to read. So this whole thing about subscribe to us, or Financial Times will do excellent articles, but they're priced out. I can't buy it. Right? It's how many people can buy it? So you sell fake news to those who can't buy, and if you're rich enough, we'll give you good news. How to rescue good information, which is vital for our democracy to survive, to even just stand still, forget about improve. How to rescue that remains like a big challenge. I think, if anything, actually, I worry about big media becoming more propagandist and more sinister now, because the packaging of it, like I expect our government to do it. So that's actually a good clue. Just watch what the government is doing closely, and a lot of big media sort of just parallels that. So, I mean, my late husband would laugh at, I would be drawing up election trips for colleagues in the BBC and Indian Express, and he'd always laugh. He'd say, like, what? You mean every 5 years is when you all go out and look at India? So there's that, oh no, we're all going on election trips. So I think that is something journalists will have to really ask themselves, that though I know why media has abandoned doing good, like if you look at Al Jazeera or BBC, which are very well resourced and funded, the whole texture of the show is different, because they've gone to, some widows of Patagonia, or to how is it difficult to bring up babies in Gaza, because they have the money to shoot. I think here, with the whole economy crashing and all, it's the easiest to stick two talking heads in the studio and get them to scrap fight. So that's the only way in which you can draw audiences. How to actually travel around the year to figure resources to do that, I think, is our big challenge. But as Anurag minus Verma wrote, that in the age of discontent, everything is content. So it's a terrible word, and it's not a substitute for news. But whatever we kind of now do in the business of giving information, we'll have to reconcile with the fact that you'll have to make your peace with, we cannot be nostalgic about, I wish I had a BBC, or I wish Prasar Bharati will turn into the BBC. It won't. There's none of that happening. Even Al Jazeera, which has done yeoman's work when it comes to the Gaza war, etc., is ultimately the royalties channel, right? So there is no perfect big behemoth media which will do. Small is in. One thing which like-minded organizations and people can do, which we've experimented with, is collaborations which make you look bigger. So we, some of us got together and we did the results, the election results, the Karnataka election result, then the 2024 election result. We reported it together, because TV has a big way, like reporting the news and then wrong news and speculations and psephologists and running ahead of the election commission. We try to do that together. But I think we need to do much more and do more investigations jointly. So I think that independent media will have to pick up the gauntlet and do that. Get absolutely fresh voices to tell their stories. There have been some amazing storytellers who've emerged through this, like a lot of delivery boys that I was listening to, people from slums who came for the Noida workers' protest, which was very brutally dealt with by the UP police, who then, the ones who were not arrested, came for this protest. So this had a very diverse social composition. It broke the rural-urban, it broke the class divide. It really jumped many hoops. So maybe pick people from there who can tell stories that matter. What is it like to be genuinely a delivery boy? Not because I want to make a film on them or sensationalize them, but use their lens to tell those real stories that are happening. I think we'll have to do that. A very fine example is of a young mother in Gaza. And this is before Gaza became really a hot button subject. She just wrote a diary about how difficult it was to bring up a young child in Gaza, how she's not getting milk powder, how to get food, etc. And slowly became a blog, and then a movement and a book. So I think we cannot get away. The kind of media we have, a lot of us sneered at it, that it centers the self and it centers the person. But there's clearly a need that it's meeting. As big media is not willing to listen to small voices, even accommodate those voices in. If it's coming out through this media, I think independent good media will have to pick up those voices and make something of it. There's also technological innovation that this side should think of. So, of course, there is a full monopoly currently of technology. But if you look at small changes, and I'll invoke Jack Dorsey here, who did the original Twitter thing, who thought that Twitter would be the place where Twitter is just 3.9% of whatever Indians say that they go to Twitter. But it runs the news because all journalists are on Twitter and heads of state are on Twitter. People, when they want to complain about Airtel or some ice cream company, they go on Twitter because that shames them. So only because there was a technological innovation about just putting a status update, right? And that made something. Then he's also recently done something which immediately the government went and banned in Jantar Mantar, which is a Bluetooth mechanism of sharing files. So it can't be, you don't have to, it doesn't go via like London. You can just take it straight through Bluetooth. So I think we have to actually get our heads together and think of new technological innovations which will make a difference. This is like a very, but almost treat kind of journalism like social reform, which has to outlast the next government, whoever is prime minister then, or whatever formation comes to power, and recognize that it's actually deep kind of seeded and not contested things in our social spectrum, which are now coming out, and use this moment to somehow make media matter, tell those stories, and I think basically just all the non-billionaires of India got together. You were talking about something that you want together. But if only just the non-billionaires in India could make common cause, we'd be on a good wicket, maybe not in terms of the total wealth available, but we can scare this lot. Crowds deeply scare Mr. Modi's government because it's been their pitch since the 80s that we do crowds and mobs. Like we bring out the crowds, right? What is this? This is the first protest organized since the 70s and 80s, which is not an issue-related protest, a big picture protest like, say, the anti-emergency protest was, or the Anna Hazare IAC was, where the RSS didn't organize things, and they can't even claim it. They're very good at claiming credit. That, we did this and we didn't do this, therefore this guy lost. Win or loss, they claim credit. But this is something really that's happened without a methodology or a tissue of connectivity that the RSS or those forces put together. So I think there's a lot here that we have to, media must suo moto take notice of the situation and regard it as a national emergency and group up and treat facts, knowledge, insights as our business of what we have to do to make this closer to what the Constitution marks out. And it's going to be 80 years to our independence next year. And what better time than to start this? Thank you very much.